Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today that is focusing on Centrify's Zero Trust Privilege solution. So I'm delighted to be joined by Kev Smith, who is the EMEA System Engineering Team Lead at Centrify, and he's going to be presenting the webinar today.
Good morning everybody. Hi, so thanks again for your time this morning. It's a little bit about me. My name's Kev. I work with Centrify as the Systems Engineering Team Lead. So I'm going to be going through with you today our take on what we call Zero Trust Privilege. And that's from the four main pillar of points that we class as being key components for you to push a Zero Trust Privilege message. So traditionally, as you know, out there in the world, as far as the privileged access management circuit is concerned, we always have a lot of existing customers or prospects that are running with a legacy PAM infrastructure. Now we're aware that these have been around for decades. They were designed back in the day when all your privileged access was constrained to systems and resources inside your network. And these system admins would traditionally maybe check out a password and camp out in that account and do whatever they needed to do today for accessing a server or a database or a network device. So it kind of served its purpose back then. But we're seeing it more and more move now into the modern day ecosystem. So we're talking about obviously cloud compute environments, the DevOps processes where people are doing orchestration and fast elasticity of compute instances, etc., or even things around containerization and support of that. So a lot of the traditional legacy PAM infrastructure is not built ready for that. Well, Centrify has always been in that space from the very beginning. So we were designed to be cloud ready. So we're designed, to be handled sort of like requestments that are not only necessary from humans. They could be machines, they could be services, it could be APIs, for example. And our ecosystem and having that ability today to be able to work with those extended requirements for Zero Trust makes us extremely quick to market. So we can't address these with those traditional appliance-based faults. So this is where Centrify fits in with their cloud-first strategy. So these kind of four pillars I was referring to earlier on about what we class as being the path or how to achieve Zero Trust. So we've got to try and educate organizations to leave behind the model of this trust but verify, but move forward to having this verifying who, contextualization of the request, where is it coming from, is there an ITIL management system behind it, providing them with a secure administration environment and granting what we class as least privilege, and then wrapping around that the capabilities of adaptive control and audit everything. And this is the space where Centrify is sitting today. And the various components that you guys and girls have probably come across or seen in our marketing all slot together to enable all your prospects and your customers to move towards this sort of utopian view of Zero Trust Privilege. So we're going to kind of dive in a little bit into each one of these four pillars, and I'll go into where we're describing what we class as what a verification is, what is a secure admin environment in the world of Centrify. So we're talking about in the ages of identities where people, workloads or services and machines might need to traditionally leverage an enterprise directory, but we're seeing more and more environments out there being able to need the support for what class as a disparate directory service. So something like Google Directory or something like LDAP. And Centrify is already built out of the ecosystem to support these directories straight away. So there's no extra connectivity configuration you're going to have to do if you want to leverage these enterprise directory identities and have them all collate into one place and then consume a service or a service account or a server login. The second kind of piece that we're talking about now is the recommendation for a best practice is to establish a unique account for things like admin purposes. Microsoft is kind of suggesting these be what we class as something like an alternate account or a -A account that's associated with the user, but it has completely separate administrative privileges over and above what the regular user might be doing. And it's also you can expose, remove the exposure of things like a public, a phone number or an email address by disparately separating this concept of a user logging in with their desktop doing something with Office 365 and then having this individual admin account going forward. And then finally, on top of that, we're talking about where we get into MFA. Now, Centrify has this MFA Everywhere ecosystem. So you can have MFA approval, perhaps for, logging onto a server or running a privileged command or even checking out a password or a secret, for example, for use in some sort of emergency break glass scenario. So the second kind of process that we're talking to here is what we class as contextualizing requests. Who raised the request? Why did they do it? Has somebody gone in and approved that? What time was it done? And Centrify has a working relationship with ServiceNow where we can programmatically permission users to do something on a server by membership or allocation of a change ticket within ServiceNow. So by having this contextualization of the request, you've begun to verify the user by allowing them to log on to the platform. You're then requiring the user to contextualize the reason why they need that request. And then, as I said, we've got that second sort of point A piece to the contextualization is about having that session or that access reviewed and approved by an administrator. I don't think that this applies to kind of everywhere. We can provide this in a granular fashion, so you might have some dev guys that don't need to contextualize their requests, but they have to log on with an administrative account, and you can mix and match these kind of concepts together. So the third pillar that we're going to be talking about today is what we class as a secure administrative admin, or a secure gateway, an SSH proxy, a jump post, whichever one you want to call it. And we class this as critical that you don't introduce your kind of traditional exposure to desktop applications during the connection to our software. And to achieve this, we must make sure that we've got a secure access is only achieved through a clean source. And to kind of achieve this, the Zero Trust Privilege message means preventing direct access from user workstations that have access to perhaps the internet and email, because these are too easily infected with malware. And we class this as access should only be achieved through approved privileged admin consoles. Where we can include things like a web-based access to sensitive systems that are locked down and connected to only a clean server gateway. Or alternatively, we can do things like present a desktop application to a user and allow them only to have access to that individual application and nothing else that's available on that server as well. And then this kind of distributed jump methodology or server gateways, they kind of serve as a dual purpose, not only for load balancing in the same network, but we can also support multiple different private networks or different Active Directory connectivities or DMZs or private networks that might be out there in the cloud compute world. I'm just going to build these out. So just to give you kind of an example, there was talking about having these multiple connectors or multiple server gateways by having this relationship of being able to install these. And these are not appliances, by the way. They're not pieces of hardware. They're just a piece of software that we install as part of the privileged access service. And by installing these gateways, we can provide that secure jump or bastion host kind of connectivity out to wherever the customers or the prospects infrastructure lives. And this is kind of this is very close to my heart. I mean, I come from an operational background. I understand operationally there's always going to be little pockets of, support staff or engineering staff that might need connectivity on a day-to-day basis. And of course, you can facilitate that by using the least privilege access model that Centrify can introduce you. But also you want to think about, controlling access to your production environments. Do you want all of your regular database administrators or system administrators or web guys or whatever team it is having standing access to your production environments? And the Centrify ethos here is to push what we class as just in time. And this is where nobody has any standing access but has to request that access to that system. And by going back and using that approval flow in the contextualization request, we can provide a programmatic way of just allowing that user to consume a server object or run a privilege command on a production host as part of an ITIL change management system. And then at the end of the duration of the ticket, that access is revoked. We have a workflow an engine built into our privileged access service, but we have a tightly a relationship with ServiceNow as well. So that's what I was trying to expand on a little bit further here, where we're talking about, guys and girls that need to have regular activity. Of course, they might need to have that just enough privilege to be able to do what they need to do, but in that production type of incident or a change control incident, then you want to be controlling it by having this just-in-time access here. And then the final component here is we're talking about the ability with Centrify to stop people from logging in from one server to another. So in that kind of context, I always talk maybe about a domain administrator. If you're a Windows domain administrator, traditionally you can log on to every single server and have administrative rights on that. But in today's zero trust privilege world, that domain administrator is going to be, a target for phishing. If a bad guy or girl wants to get hold of the credentials, that's the kind of people they want to get hold of. So in the Centrify model, what we can do is by placing our agent on the platform and by enforcing least privilege access management, domain administrators have to be explicitly given the rights to be able to log on to a server, even if they're a domain administrator. And by having this contextualization or this just-in-time access, or even in the class of an emergency access break class access, domain admins can still go off and do what they need to do, but they have to be, there is this whole zero trust privilege, the MFA, the contextualization, the just-in-time access, etc., that starts to build out this, the message that we say about zero trust privilege. And then finally, the utopian view here is the ability to record the activity of what happened on that endpoint. Again, Centrify is unique to the market in that we don't require any specific hardware to do this. We do everything on an agent-based solution. Everything's done on the endpoint, so we're not upsetting or changing operational procedures. As an administrator that needs to RDP to a server for something, we can record his activity as his RDPs onto that server and carries out his functionality. But if he needs to do an RDP to a development server, for example, you might say, well, we're not necessarily interested in having that session-based recording, so we can do it on a very, very granular fashion. And also just to add color to that, as I said, it can be done on a granular basis, or if you want to, you can audit everything everywhere. So we have that capability built in, and that kind of leads you into this, this utopian view of, what we're talking about here is verifying users, who they are, contextualizing their request, using a secure administration environment to separate their regular desktop to the infrastructure. And then just doing the limited privilege management and then wrapping that around with the auditing everywhere. So not only do we do that session-based recording, but obviously we can tie in with things like Splunk or ArcSight or QRadar for the more traditional SIEM-based integrations. And then the final thing I wanted to summarize with before I go into just talking about the products in just a little bit more detail is we've spoken about, as I said, the verification, the contextualization, the secure admin environment, the auditing everywhere, and the limited privileges. Centrify also has this capability of doing adaptive MFA. And when we're talking about adaptive MFA, we're talking about using our proprietary technology stack to identify where the user's coming in from, what day of the week it is, what IP address is, what device they're coming in from. And we can start to build out an intelligent risk profile based upon that user's behavior, and then start to intelligently trigger MFA based on that regular access. So for example, Monday to Friday, we see a user coming in, they might be requesting access to do something with privileges on a server. We will learn that that's regular activity for them. We may still ask them to MFA, but if all of a sudden they go home and they need to do something over a weekend that's classed as being sort of more of a medium risk, they may not have done it before, or they're coming in from an IP address we don't recognize, we can trigger MFA at that point as well. And then, yeah, building that out, we have this machine-based, I love using that word, machine-based learning, for what we class as those privileged behavior analytics. So, you know, it's, as I said, about the risk profile of what the user does. So I'm just going to kind of summarize now and dive into just to reiterate the components that Centrify are offering, where they fit in with the requirements of our customers today. So we've spoken about the privileged access service. This is our traditional vault, but really cloud ready. The ability to, you know, do the regular password vaulting, providing that administrative gateway mechanism that I spoke about earlier. Our workflow engine for privileges on demand, as I said, don't have all your production servers all exposed with everybody having access all the time, use a role-based access mechanism and workflow and approval to tie that in. And then finally, MFAing not only to access to the vault, but when they perhaps do a privilege command, or if they want to enforce MFA on server login. The authentication service, this is more about doing the traditional least privileged access management and limiting lateral movement. Centrify has a patented, unique to market technology called zones, which allow us to do segregated access. So you can group computers into zones and only allow certain users to carry out functions on those servers, but not have access elsewhere. And then our traditional Unix namespace bridging, which is our core product, been around for 14 years or so, is part of what we call that authentication service. And then we have something called the privileged elevation service. So this is around our role-based access mechanism, again, based upon AD or even LDAP or Google Directory, as I was talking about earlier on in the call, about how we can allow users to elevate their user accounts to run something that might be require privileges. So it might be, you know, a web administrator needing to restart a web server on Unix. You know, they would log in as themselves, they would run a privilege command provided by Centrify that allows them to do that. And then optionally, you would, you know, you can trigger them from MFA or do a session-based recording as well. And then just to finalize, summarizing to that, we're talking, as I said, about the auditing and monitoring service. So this is endpoint, not necessarily on the gateway, but this is endpoint on the agent-based session recording for Unix and Windows. And then on the server gateway mechanism, it can be further extended to secure access to things like network switches as well. And then, as I said, just taking a step back to the previous slides, we're talking about our adaptive MFA. You know, what was the behavior of the user? What was the risk profile of that user? Was it low? Was it high? Do we want to block their access because they're coming in from a country we don't recognize? So we're providing that all around in these 4 pillars across the platform. And as I said, you can mix and match the piece. If you want to just have, you know, Windows privilege management and Windows auditing, absolutely you can do that. If you want to have the password vaulting, the session brokering, absolutely you can do that. So you can mix and match them in as you see to. And then the last slide is just really, I just want to summarize where we are sitting today as far as our partner ecosystem is, as far as doing things like you know, job starters, movers, leavers, processes, or just in time. We're tying in with ServiceNow. If you go to the ServiceNow store and search for Centrify, you will see some certified plugins for us where users can use ServiceNow to request access to systems using that ecosystem that I've just gone through over the previous slides. Our partner or sister company, Idaptive, is now providing any single sign-on capability. So things like Office 365 or Federation to applications or such things we can provide with a partner, as I said, with Idaptive. And then yes, late last year, we are now partnering up with SailPoint, and we've got plugins that are being validated now by SailPoint to do that interface back to SailPoint to provide that identity and governance and assurance driver as well, which I know is quite keen from other conversations I've had. So there's a kind of the what I call the high level pitch on Zero Trust. I'm going to leave it there and open it up for any questions to you guys and girls on the call, and I thank you for your time.
Brilliant, thank you, Kev. So if you do have any questions at all, on the panel just at the side there's a questions tab, so if you just open that and type your questions in there, I'll read those out for Kev if we have any that come through. We just wait maybe another 20 seconds to see if any come through. Okay, so there's one question here. It says, please could you reiterate what the key USPs of using Centrify over other vendors would be?
Back on. Sorry, I was on mute there. So there's two or three key differentiators between us and the other vendors out there. Firstly, Centrify is cloud first. We were always cloud first when it came to doing things like privileged access management, and all of our software is written by us. We're not about merger and acquisitions or buying in third-party technology. So all of the stack that I've gone through as far as Zero Trust is concerned is all in-house. The second piece is that we are software only. We don't need appliances. We don't need virtual machines to be hardened in our SaaS model. We are extremely easy and lightweight to set up, but with extreme maturity in the privilege management space, specifically around the more traditional infrastructure side of things. We're leveraging Active Directory as the source here. We can support many different types of complicated AD environments without any changes to those. And some other differentiators as well is when I was talking about the cloud connector technology or the server gateway, as the slides refer to. We can allow you to extend out your Active Directory identities from on-premise out to the cloud compute environment, whether it be AWS or Azure or GCP or a hybrid cloud that you've got. We can allow you to extend out your AD identities without you needing to copy your AD data out to the cloud. So some customers are coming to us and saying, oh, I've got to replicate my domains out to AWS so I can allow my users to log on with their AD accounts. Centrify and is unique to the market, does not need you to extend out your AD, which is a massive saving for a lot of the customers. If you want to know more about that, you can come back to Amy. That's known as the Centrify Identity Broker, and I'll be pleased to go into more detail with you regarding that.
Thank you, Kev. We've had some more questions come through. This one says, how can you integrate the products with other core management systems other than ServiceNow?
Can we, or how do we?
Oh, it says, how can you integrate the products with other core management systems?
Okay, so there is a complete, I'm going to get slightly technical here. There is an API that's available. So all of the capabilities that's built into the product can be poked and prodded using the API. There are hooks that are built into our software as well that allow those APIs to call back to another service management system. I can tell you that we are planning on working with Remedy this year as well, and there are some other integrations that have been achieved externally via our professional services guys as well. So although I talk about ServiceNow and SailPoint, they're the ones that we're certified with. Don't think that we can't integrate with others with a little bit of pixie dust magic, as we say.
Brilliant, thank you, Kev. And there's another question here. The question reads, you refer to cloud only, but what components are in the cloud? I couldn't see anything off-premise on the diagrams. Also, what controls can be added to cloud solutions like Azure or Office 365?
Right, okay. So when we're talking about the architecture of the privileged access service, it's done in two components. There is a front end that sits as a SaaS service, and then there is the back end, which is the server gateway, which we was talking about earlier in one of my slides. And by having that relationship there, you're effectively disconnecting the front office, as I call it, and the back office. Now, by having those secure gateways, you can have as many of those as you want, talking back to different Active Directory environments, or and then there's a role-based access mechanism that's built in to control who can gain access to the components that are built into the privileged access service. Now, for single sign-on and control to that, again, for things like Office 365, we're going back to what Adaptive does now. So for things like Office 365, we can replace the need to fire up ADFS. That secure gateway there can also act as a replacement and allows you to federate your identity into Office 365 back into the PaaS platform itself. I'll be interested just to, if you want to talk further about those specific use cases, I can dive in and maybe show you some more about the architecture slides and how it all slots together.
Thanks, Kev. Was that on your presentation that you've got now?
No, that's in another slide deck.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is if whoever asked that call, I didn't see who it was. If they'd like to, if they want to have a more in-depth conversation there, we can take that offline.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So John, pop it in the feedback form if you'd like to do that. So thank you, Kev. So there's one more question here. This says, so how do you find this product compared to Zscaler?
This is nothing. This is nothing the same as Zscaler. So in what context? You mean as far as the MFA is concerned, or not sure what the reference is?
Nadiv, if you could just reply, and then we can answer that for you. Let's wait for the response to come through.
Yeah, I mean, Zscaler is more about sort of sandboxing SSL inspection, I think. So I'm just interested to.
They've said yes, MFA and other aspects. If that makes sense.
Okay, so we provide our own MFA engine, as I was explaining, but we can support other third-party MFAs as well. So if you've got, it could be Microsoft MFA, anything that's radius compliant, secure ID, those types of tokens, we can also interface with them. But Centrify provides its own MFA application that does the equivalent, I'm assuming. I'd need to go up and read a little bit further about what the MFA capabilities of Zscaler are. But even though we're saying we're providing our own MFA engine, we're also saying at the same time, we can work with existing MFAs from other providers.
Thanks, Kev. And thanks everyone for all your questions. So I think that's it for today. Can't see any more that have come through. So thank you everyone for taking the time out of your days to join the webinar today, and thank you so much, Kev, as well, for presenting for us. So as mentioned at the beginning, there are a few questions at the end, so if you would like any more information or if you have any feedback, please pop that in our critique form at the end, and I will also send you all the link to the recording tomorrow. Okay, so thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day today.
All right, thank you, Amy. Cheers. Bye-bye.